And we are live. Good evening. Haiti Oropesa with Florida You Judge, and I am here with Connie Burton. And I'm going to go ahead and just take off the call-in number, which is, by the way, 813-221-9700. But I'm going to momentarily take this off so that we can see Connie's beautiful face. I don't want to obstruct her face. Good evening again. I am joined by Getulio Gonzalez Molatieri, a very active up and coming activist. He's been around and on the scene for a bit. Connie for, I don't know, I wouldn't be able to, I know for sure at least decades. Some decades you've been around. Yes? And, yep. So I'm not even going to venture a guess. I know it's a very, very, very long time that you've been out there using your voice and effort and energy and life and blood to call out for justice, equality, fairness for all. And so with that, I wanted to have you on tonight on the heels of last weekend. There was a very important parade that takes place annually in celebration of a great man, Martin Luther King Jr. There's streets, avenues named after him. He's memorialized as he well deserves. But so I wanted to have you on so that you can provide post commentary to the parade, because this is a perspective that I have. I can't read anyone's hearts or thoughts or minds, but and I'm not going to judge or single anybody out, but it just is a suspicion that sometimes this parade is used like as an early campaign, the place to be seen. I think that there are honorable, good servants, public servants. That's what we really should call them, not politicians. There's a distinction, actually, in my mind. But Connie, I right after the immediately after the parade, I think that night or the day after, this came up on my feed. Two of your posts that were very provocative and interesting. One of them said, when quoting him and his work, they are not united in his values. They love a dead king, which makes celebrating his legacy easier. Very provocative. You have the floor all night. I'm going to shut up now, but I want Connie Burton. You're always welcome here. Okay? I want those who are on the ground. They're not in ivory towers or places of privilege, political. I want persons on the ground that are there in the struggle continually, calling for things, as you said, his values.
Yes.
Okay? It's not just an annual thing. It's an everyday thing. And what are we doing measurably other than when roll calls had, oh, I'm here at the parade. What other than just being at an annual parade, what have you done? What does your track record as a public servant demonstrate that has furthered his values?
Well, I really want to appreciate being invited to this platform. Haiti, I have known you.
Okay, so we're having some technical difficulties. Connie knows what to do. She's going to, Connie, you're gonna re-hit that link that you were sent to come back on. And so your camera went off for a moment, but we're I'm chill.
Okay,
I'm cultivating peace, no stress, no matter what the crisis. We're gonna chill out and we're gonna navigate and figure out how to get through whatever. But Connie, we can hear you. I don't know what happened to your camera.
Maybe I did something, I don't know.
Well, you go ahead and you speak as you try to figure that out. I want to present you your beautiful self on the screen, but you go ahead and there you go. You see peace, the way of peace, like Martin Luther King said. I'm gonna.
You have the floor again, madam.
It's all you, Connie.
Okay, so I wrote that post because I have been just turning this in my mind not for just since the parade, but when I think about just based on my commitment to activism around social and economic justice, I'm always looking at measurement of those that are in powers of influence, how are they using it? And then when we come to these occasions, whether it is the celebration of Black History Month or something in which politicians tie themselves to the interest of Black people, I am looking at, well, what have they done for us? And when we get closer to election cycles, we see more and more opportunities for them, and the conditions of the people remain the same. And so, in my study of Dr. King and his work, his value, his sacrifice, his commitment to the liberation of poor people uh, for all, and I look at the climate in which we're living at now. And I look at, in particular, the city in which I am, because many of them hold these political uh, titles. They are connected to political parties where Black people have been committed to throwing out full support behind parties that we thought was fighting for the simplicity of all. So that's kind of where that post there, my personal evaluation when I look at the decline of our community, when I look at criminal justice and the lack of reform that is occurring there, when I look at the school of prison pipeline and how that phrase has become so easy to throw off people's tongue when we see the condition in the miseducation of Black children. So, what have they done for us?
Okay, hold on a second. Hold on, Connie, because I'm getting text messages from kind friends out in the that are community members as well, comrades of ours. So I need help. Please use the comment section. They're saying they're hearing some echoes. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and see. I'm gonna mute myself. All right. Can someone kindly? Can you all hear me? Can you hear me, Connie?
Yes.
Can you hear me, Getulio?
Yes.
Am I echoing?
You're
Yes?
not echoing.
Okay. Can you, whoever is listening that is texting me, can you please send in? We're gonna chill out. We're gonna chill out because we have as long as we need tonight. We're gonna take call-ins and we're gonna allow you to comment also, and we'll publish your commentary, reaction, a question for Connie in the comments link provided here on this platform. Okay, so this is what the critique that I am getting, that everyone should mute while you talk. So we're gonna go ahead and try that, and the person who is texting me now, who's listening, can you please see if that is a technological fix, okay? So mute yourself, Getulio. I'm muting myself now. It's all you, Connie. Continue.
Okay, so given the fact that many elected officials here in the city of Tampa are all registered Democrats, and for centuries, Black people have been committed to the party and principles of the Democratic Party. Since around the mid 1960, 65, when Dr. King and so many named and unnamed courageous people fought for our right to vote, we have casted our support primarily with that party. And when I look in the city of Tampa, and this is what I have to measure by, a city that has all constitutional office holders that are Democrats. The mayor is a Democrat. All of the city council members are Democrats. The Democrats control mostly the school board and county commission. And then when I look at the condition of Black people that have been loyal to that party, when I look at the return on our votes, I question where their values are, not aligned with King, but aligned to their party platform. And so I'm just the type of person, and I think criticism is valuable for our growth. I don't pretend or profess to know it all, but I can only speak to my life experience as a working class poor Black woman living here in America. And so when I look at the fact that our community is being gentrified in places in which Black people have had to labor hard, live hard in those neighborhoods, some of them up under the control of the federal government that could not get the necessary assistance that we need, knee deep in poverty. When we hear the phrase of the first fired and the last hired, these continuations then question how then can you participate if it's not just a photo opportunity for yourself. How do you participate or line yourself up to be king like, that you would say that you would be on the side of a Dr. Martin Luther King as he talked about how we should dismantle things from poverty to the police brutality. And so that's where the stroke of that comment came from. I often find myself going to the city council meeting on a regular basis. I look back and research that in 2020, the council unanimously put together a resolution in which the city, the mayor has came out as well, saying that for their past indiscretion, for the past injustices of racism against people of color, the city in 2020, at the crust of Black Lives Matter, at the crust of all of these disparities being disposed nationally, this city government said that it was going to do better. And so my question to them and to all, again, stakeholders, show us proof that is actually working for us. Show us that we don't have to become the sacrificial lamb of seeing our communities and families disperse because now wealthy white developers have an eye for the properties in which Black people live when those properties are the worst. And of course, they give good phrases and they got their little statistic renderings and drawings, and they sometimes even having Black folks cheering them on, saying it's a good thing. But my question to them, that if it was so, if we managed to live in some of these conditions when they were so bad, then the humane thing to do, in my opinion, would to be to offer a better quality of life for people so they can make the needed adjustment. If this is the America for all, then it should not be distinguished based on those who have wealth and those who do not. When we talk about the need to reform the criminal justice system, we see in this city small snail pieces of movement where the state attorney perhaps won't prosecute for low-level marijuana uses, but it almost is a slap in the face when you see now marijuana is becoming to white people what cotton was to another generation. So you're seeing marijuana facilities bountiful throughout all of the Black community. We got one of the biggest warehouses of distribution in the heart of the Black community, but yet we got a lot of young people that is languishing in prison, and their first charge into the criminal justice system was based off a marijuana conviction. And we haven't seen the courage. We have not seen the courage of stakeholders, of these politicians willing to do a king-like moment, that stand up and say, not only do we dispel racism, but we dispel act of racism, because we know statistically more Black men end up inside of these institutions of hate. We know on and on and on, that Black people has not gotten its fair share of the pie here in America. And my criticism to all of the stakeholders, that if you believe in the values of King, Dr. King, then don't even talk about it. Let us see real critical patterns under your leadership, that you would move in a way that would provide justice and a liberty and self-determination for individuals that have had to live up under the thumb of white supremacy.
Wow, Connie, that was quite a lot that needs to be unpacked. Julio, I can't unmute you. What's going on? There. And if anyone hears echoing, I'd appreciate those of you who are back then or have been texting me to, if there's echoing, continual echoing, let me know. Okay, so here's a question. One of the things, and you have a lot here. I took a lot of notes, Connie, because that was a mouthful. That was. This is for Connie and for Getulio. Getulio today, I'm when I'm done, I will say who I'd like to hear from. But today, earlier when we were working out technological logistics, Getulio told me, hey, I attend. Wait, hold on a second. Okay. All right, so I'm being told that when someone's talking, they're the only ones that should have the mic open. Everyone needs to be muted so that there's no an echo effect. So I'll mute myself now when I'm finished with this thought, and I'd like for both of you to respond, and I'll advise which order so that we know the muting, who needs to be muted. So Getulio advised that today he had attended a criminal justice event discussion at the Tampa Bay Tiger Club. I've previously been a member of that. I haven't since. I've not renewed my membership, not for any particular reason. I've been quite tied up this 2021, 2022, maybe just as challenging. I hope not, God willing. But so Getulio was there today, and I saw the announcement because I got the promo through email, and I saw it on my feed, on my social media feed. And I had these questions, and I wanted to ask today, and I want Connie to answer first. Getulio was there today, and there's a picture of him, handsome Getulio. Wow, you were dressed to the nines. Look at you. And he got to ask questions. Good for him. I think there was a fee attached. I asked him how much the fee was. I think $25 for lunch. I know that the membership fee is $75. So we have one of the three major stakeholders, as they're called, the public defender, the state attorney, and the chief justice, or the chief judge of the 13th Judicial Circuit, Judge Ronald Figueroa. We had, Getulio today attended and said that Andrew Warren, the state attorney for Hillsborough County, attended, and so did the public defender, Julian Holt. And so my question is, you mentioned, Connie, that a King moment. And that King, Dr. Martin Luther King, was about the poor people. How do you expect, when you're going to have a conversation, I think that the theme or the topic of discussion was how they, as stakeholders who otherwise generally have to be adversarial in the system, that every now and again they can come together to get things accomplished. I think that's a great idea. I do. When adversaries can join for a common goal where there's no conflict, for the betterment of the community as a whole, I think that's a good thing. But how do you expect a poor person? You described yourself right now, Connie, as a working class, poor black woman. You're concerned about poor people. One of the stakeholders represents the indigent, poor people. The public defender across the land. Our Constitution, God bless America, ensures the right for poor people to be represented. But when we're going to have a conversation such as the one that was had this afternoon at noon, lunchtime, do you think poor people can afford to attend a discussion at somewhat of an elite club, Tiger Club, because you have to have $75 to be a part of that. If not, you can't even ask questions if you're not a member. And then on top of that, for the lunch for a particular event throughout the year, that's another $25, $35. I'm going to mute myself. I'd like to hear thoughts from both of you. Poor people are hugely impacted, hugely. And we all know, a lot of people say this all the time on the street. If you've got money, you're going to fare out better in the criminal justice system. And if you're poor, you're going to get screwed, to put it bluntly. Poor people generally afford to attend a noon meeting discussing important issues that they're affected by, and do they have the financial resources to do so? I'm going to mute my.
Well, I would just say, in prioritizing, my life responsibility, that wouldn't been top of the scale. Rent is escalating and spiraling out of control in this city. Transportation is an issue. But even if it was free, what opportunity would we have in a small sound bite to get our point across? And sometimes, I point out that they are all Democrats. What I recognize first and foremost, that they are all white. And the fact of the matter, whether they are Democrats, Republican, Libertarians, what I do know is that they're not willing to disrupt the status quo. We've been talking about prison reform for a very long time, criminal justice reform for a very, very long time, and we are still pretty much in the same pace. I remember when President Barack Obama was in power, and he made some tweaking as he was walking out of office. And immediately, Jeff Sessions came back and reversed the reforms that Obama put in place. And it has been dead silent under the Biden's administration. I remember when Bill Clinton was the president of the United States, Joe Biden being the vice president, I understand and I felt the impact of the crime bill and how it devastated our community. And while I see how crime was and crack epidemic was taken on then as compared to the opioid crisis, that we see young men for nonviolent offense other than using the government dope as an opportunity for themselves. It caused damage to the community, but using the government's dope as an economic opportunity to lift their individual self up, only to be caught up then in the trap, because once you become a felon in this country, you're reduced back to a slave. That felony distinction determines how you live, where you could live, where you could work, how much you could make. Do you need indigent care if you qualify for it? It has all type of stigma attached to it. And on the other hand, the same dope, now, like I said, the marijuana is becoming a cash cow for young white entrepreneurs. And then the treatment side of opioid crisis from the pharmaceutical on down has not been criminalized, even though it has caused damage and harm within the white community. And so I don't expect Andrew Warren or Julianne Holt to disrupt this system, because they have to think about what is the political liability for themselves. And people are not willing or have not shown that they're willing to spend their political capital on Black folks. That's why right now, the Attorney General for Joe Biden, when Joe Biden have both branches, 3 branches of government that he controls, has not stepped out and said, we're going to reverse. We're going to go back and undo what Jeff Sessions and Donald Trump did. because he's afraid of the retaliation of white voters. And so black folks is always caught in the middle. And so going to a luncheon like that, where you only have 3 minutes to speak truth, but then how is it accepted by the general population that many of them bank their whole careers, their retirements, their way of life, what type of lifestyle they can provide for their children, all the way down to creating a legacy of wealth, just being tied to things that cause African people pain and harm. Andrew Warren know quite well, Julianne Hope know quite well privately. They'll tell you what, that's the way the system is. Well, I don't need a private conversation. That if you know that black people are being plea bargained at the highest of the chart, and you are too afraid to set mandates in your office, then that's telling that you would rather ride with the status quo. And so what I'm looking at now all across the country is, on one hand, the hopelessness, but then on the other hand, of black rebellion. I was so thankful for the rise of Black Lives Matter. That young people are not just willing to sit and wait and be passive to take this system on. And as bad as January the 6th was, I was glad that that happened too. Because now we have gotten an opportunity to see and make some deep comparison and conversations in our community. That had that been black bodies led by Black Lives Matter, charging up through the Capitol, banging on the door, talking about hanging the vice president of the United States, we would still be picking up bodies and burying people. But when we see this type of discomfort amongst white people that is privileged, even at its worst, they still come out far ahead of black and brown people. Because I can't tell you where poor white women and their families live. They're not in public housing, I can tell you that. So there's going to always be a different fabric that is going to be woven for white people, that they're not going to get the brunt of punishment, because America was not built that way. Democracy is not challenged that way. And it is temperamentally hard for white people to deem other white people, to being held accountable until the pressure is mounted so bad or the crime is so egregious, then there's nothing left but to say you're guilty. But for the most part, it's always an escape hatch, because that's what America is. It's built on white supremacy. It's built on white life, white values. The black baby doll is ugly, black cake, black devils, black has always been something that people with inside of the majority race feel that they must shun. And so when I say the celebration of Dr. King, the beating of Dr. King, the spying on Dr. King, the U.S. government pushing King toward suicide, that wasn't no Joe Blow did that. That was the U.S. government that spied on black leadership, disrupted our opportunity to be a self-determined people. From Tulsa, Oklahoma on down to destruction of our creative talent, not being recognized of our contributions that we bring to America. Because there's room on this planet for all of us to live. But if people and groups of people, even to what the governor is saying today, that he's writing a bill to make it punishable, I don't know by what, fine or what, that white people can't even be made comfortable in having a discussion about historical history. So that tells us where we're at right now. And we got a lot of work to do.
So, should I speak Haiti or?
You know what? My cursor was going a little cuckoo, and I was trying to mute myself. But yes, that was a good assumption that it's your turn.
Okay, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there as far as what Miss Connie said, and it goes without saying that I agree with all of it. Um, to begin, like I just want to point out the hypocrisy. If for the people who are on social media, who are on Twitter, you see all these corporations, these mega corporations, who are getting in the way of people unionizing, of workers unionizing, and you're making it hard. For example, Starbucks. Starbucks all over the country. One by one, sure enough, their workers are unionizing to be able to collectively bargain, and Starbucks is fighting really hard against it. And they're okay. We believe in the values of Dr. King, but they won't mention that Dr. King, that when he was assassinated, it was with workers who were like he was there to help workers unionize. And they don't mention like this is Dr. King's words. And one day we must ask a question: why are there 40 million poor people in America? And when you begin to ask that question, you are raising questions about the economic system and a broader distribution of wealth. When you ask that question, you begin to question the capitalistic economy. And I'm simply saying that more and more we've got to begin to ask questions about this whole society. Dr. King was a rebel. So these people try to show him as a pastor in peace and love. Dr. King was arrested 40 times. He antagonized the system. He was an anti-establishmentarian. So I just want to get the hypocrisy of people trying to repackage this sanitized image of Dr. King. Like it's fake. And then to add insult to injury, you have these attacks on critical race theory, and certain politicians and certain parties are using the argument that we got to fight back against critical race theory, so that, for example, in Polk County, I won't name which high school, but a white student can say, listen, I don't want to learn about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. because as a white person, it makes me uncomfortable that my ancestors did that. So it's a suppression. So uh, on one hand, they're putting the man on a platform, and on the other, they want to erase everything that he did. It's a complete psychosis that's going on, and it doesn't make sense to me. And then it's a lot. It's a lot going on. And then with the 13th Amendment that Connie brought up, with that like slavery is still legal if you commit a crime. Once you're incarcerated, you're property of the state. So these are issues that we all need to work on every day. As far as the meeting itself and the Tiger Bay Club, of course, it's inequitable. You know what I mean? I mean, having to pay to have access to local public servants is ridiculous, but it is what it is. I try to do what I can, and take my voice to where I can and speak up for people. Um, Fortunately, from that crowd, I heard people talking about, or at least questioning that panel about abolishing cash bail. I heard one member of the ACLU bring up something according to trying to abolish cash bail. I brought up the terrible statistics of school to prison pipeline here in the state of Florida. In the state of Florida, the juveniles or adolescents are referred to the criminal justice system at a 30% higher rate than the national average. I brought that up. I also brought up, the idea of what are you doing for our alternative response? If there's a domestic dispute or a mental health crisis, why should a police officer with a gun go to deal with that situation when a caseworker or a clinician who's trained to de-escalate in that type of situation would do a much better job? You know, I personally, I was impressed to see that crowd bring up a lot of good questions, questions that align with our values, so to speak. So to me, it signals that there is a broader conversation going on. Are things changing as quick as we would like? No, but that's why we keep doing the work that we do. And as far as the parade, I mean, everyone's gonna try to say like, yeah, I'm an ally. Of course, I love Dr. King. Now vote for me. Who's I mean, maybe I'm being cynical. I mean, obviously, there are a lot of good public servants who do what they do because they believe in it and they want to help people. But yeah, we definitely don't have enough public servants going against the status quo. And President Joe, status quo got to go. That's how I feel about it. It's not working for anybody, and they hide behind senators' mansion and senators' mansion and cinema when President Biden can just as easily sign an executive order freeing every nonviolent criminal or anyone who's committed a nonviolent crime, right? And that's the crux of it. And I'm just so dissatisfied with what's currently going on in the federal government. And the best, my way of venting is getting involved in local politics and applying pressure on local public servants to do what they can do to reform the system that we have here locally. And also, I like redistricting and the redistricting and voting rights. Dr. King was all about civil rights, and then all over the country, state legislatures are making it almost impossible to vote. Yeah, and if you can't vote, you can't change anything else. I mean, like the system or not, that's how it works.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let me go ahead and jump in real quickly. And I wanted to, Connie was said that you get 3 minutes. That would be a little generous, but in actuality, you get 30 seconds. And why do I remember? Because when the mayoral race was taking place in Tampa, I went and I asked a question of then candidate, now mayor, Jane Castor. I had 30 seconds, and then and you were there, Connie, if my recollection serves me right. Yes. And what did I get met with? Some hostility, because I was questioning the little, oh, I'm blue, I'm red, but I am whatever color needs to be to get elected here. That happens. So that's why I'm independent. I turned independent after being a Republican for the majority of my life, only because my parents came from Cuba and they felt that the Kennedy administration screwed Cubans over during the Bay of Pigs invasion. And that is a grudge that they've held on. And so Republicans don't really serve that voting bloc, which unbelievably maintains loyalty to that party. But that's another topic. You only get 30 seconds. I was met with hostility when I asked Jane Castor, you've been a Republican forever and a day, and now all of a sudden, when you're getting close to run in a mayoral race in a city that is blue, you have to pretty much be blue to win. You're all of a sudden a Democrat. And so let's talk about that she's blue, but let's look at under her administration as chief, and even now as a mayor, what her track record is. Does her record align well with the values of Dr. Martin Luther King? And we have a caller, so I'm going to let him speak before turning it back to Connie. Christopher Cano is on the line, and we will hear from him. Go ahead, Chris, and thanks for calling in. Hold on, I think I lost him. Hold on, Chris, I think I lost you. Hold on, I apologize. Go ahead again. Yeah, there's a wiring issue, but you go ahead. Go ahead and pick up from touching upon the loyalty of the Republicans to a party that doesn't really give a rip about them. Cuba's still in the same condition and worse, and nothing's gonna change other than they're gonna keep saying, "Oh, yeah, the embargo, that's really good. Keep it there. We care about." No, no. So you go ahead, Chris. What were you saying? Okay, so were you able to hear him, Hatulio? You didn't hear Christopher Kano. That's weird. You can hear me? So, oh boy, yikes. That was quite of what you said. That so let's do this. I'm gonna send you the link. Could jump on. I'm gonna send you a link of so that you can jump on the broadcast. I want you to. I'm sorry. I if you can't remember all of that, can you come on real quick? Because for some reason the audience didn't hear you. All right, I'm gonna send you a link. Something's happening here with the wiring. I'll send you a link right now. Okay, Christopher Kano said a lot and it was good stuff, so I am gonna bring him, I'm gonna let him just jump on real quickly. Connie, I'm gonna let you talk.
Okay, can you hear me? Because he was buzzing out. And so, basically what we see now is two parties dueling for power and without a concentration or a care for what's going to happen to the people. And so only that 1% of the population that controls the wealth is making determination on the status quo of everybody else. And the sad part about it, in my opinion, is that poor white, poor brown, black people, we have an opportunity to unify up under a king banner. But we are so divided based on people want to follow the leader. People are not willing to organize, struggle, rebel, take power, take control. be a self-determining people. And so now, I only hope that the generation behind me continue to, stay focused. Don't get consumed with materialism. Don't buy into capitalism is the end all for everything or all your happiness. And you find a way in which you can live with everybody else on the planet. I had an opportunity to go to, I'm just say this real quick. I went to Ghana in 2019, my first experience going to Africa. And let me tell you, it was a life-changing moment for me. I saw the beauty of the people, but I saw the determination of our people too. So I plan on living out the rest of my life being very intentional, very focused, being unapologetic for fighting for freedom.
You know, one thing that I really like that you said tonight, I already respect you, Connie. You already have my respect. But every now and again, and that happens regularly, gems come out of your mouth. And this one's, some public servants don't get this. Okay? Criticism, there's a value in criticism, you said earlier. Because it's important for growth. If you're not open to criticism, you shouldn't be in public office. Because unless you can walk on water, if somebody walks on water, I'm probably going to vote for them, perhaps. But if you don't walk on water, you're going to be criticized. And if you don't like being criticized, you shouldn't be in office. That's it. Because there's always room for improvement. I know that I'm going to be able, if I aim towards that, be better tomorrow, be better than I was today. And if you can't see that, then you shouldn't be in office. Chris is on. Thank you for coming on. He said a ton, which was so good. And I'm sorry that I have to get on my A game with some of the technical difficulties that I have, and I haven't been broadcasting regularly, but hopefully in the near future we're not going to have those problems. Chris, unmute, and I want to hear your response in regards to, I made commentary about this little political shindig for the people with the financial means and time to take off from work. It's only an hour, a lunch, but I don't think most people working class really have maybe the financial, especially now with the inflation and with the economic challenges that are out there. But you only really get 30 seconds. I'm not getting a lot of bang for my buck when I only get 30 seconds to ask a question. But I'm open to, in fairness, I want to say this before I give you the floor, Chris. In fairness, a couple of hours before we started at 7, Julio mentioned that he attended today. And so I didn't really give the persons that are being mentioned, the 3 stakeholders, the opportunity to maybe also, in fairness, be present to weigh in. They're invited in reaction to tonight's topic, if they'd like. And, an evening hour where it's virtual versus a brick and mortar where people might find it harder to attend. But look, this is beautiful. It's free. Anyone could jump on. We have the ability to take calls or comments. And they'll have more access to taxpayer salaried public servants who can answer questions freely and maybe not have a time limit. Okay, Chris, it's all you now.
Well, Haiti, number one, kudos to you for, taking on being a studio engineer in addition to, everything else that you're doing. So I know it's not easy to run a podcast. And so the technical difficulties get worked out over time. No biggie. But what was said this evening was very profound. And I have much respect for Connie and Julio and what they said. And Haiti, you touched on something when you mentioned about Cubans being loyal to the Republican Party. And Connie mentioned about African Americans being loyal to the Democratic Party and how in many ways both those communities don't see the return on the political capital they invest. You're not seeing the dollars being put back into those communities. As a matter of fact, you're seeing many of those communities being oppressed and used to make a dollar. So when we talk about these folks who are out here making money, it really has to sting you to then, look at our local politicians and see how they tie in to these bigger, larger national fights. And Tulio, when you said you like to work, local politics because you're fed up with the federal ones, I can tell you I've worked with every level of government, and it doesn't get any less frustrating to see corrupt people advance, to see people without spines advance, and see people who are strong with their ideas and are for the people, be hamstringed because of how money dominates the system. And I think that's the problem, in many ways. But it was touched on in Tampa. Everybody in the government's a Democrat. So you can't look at and blame it on partisan politics. And, what I find interesting is that there are 2 former Republicans on the all Democrat city council, and the mayor's a former Republican. And not just that the mayor is a former Republican, but a former police chief. So when we look at these issues of oppression and systemic racism in the community, we have a leader to point to. And as chief, she did nothing to clean up the department. And as mayor, we see the same thing. And you can go back and look at where the Citizens Review Board recently came under restructure, and that the mayor gets half of the appointments, the council gets the other half, and then one person is for the NAACP. But when it initially came up from reform, it seemed like the city council was going to come out guns a-blazing. And what that fight showed me is we have 3 types of politicians on our city council. Truly corrupt ones who will do whatever those campaign donors writing checks want them to do. Those without a spine who, although idealists in their heart, are willing to make a deal even though that deal is bad for the community. And then those idealists who know that they are in the minority and have no real power to make anything. So in many ways, they keep their mouth shut. But as Dr. King and so many other civil rights leaders have said, keeping quiet when there is oppression going down makes you complicit with it. And so that's why we need people to speak up in the community. I'm willing to speak up and say the deals that we're getting right now from our local officials, they got to do better. And you know what? If the Democratic Party wants to try and run me out for saying that, then so be it. I'm willing to stand on my ground and on this fight. It's not right to see corrupt politicians advancing. It's not right to know that our own city council has private prisons writing campaign donation checks.
Well, you know what, Connie? I think let's get her situated. Connie, your camera you went off the screen there. Tonight's broadcast has been interesting. We've been going for, now it's gonna be in 3 minutes an hour. Connie, you can jump back on if you'd like. Connie. Let me see if she's gonna jump back on. But Getulio, go ahead and in the future we'll have more of these broadcasts. I want to bring Connie back on, but I want specifics. If we're gonna measure who is actually measurably, we can see something as to being aligned with, as she said, having a king moment, a king-like moment or action. While you're in office, we want to give props, and when not, we want to call those persons, bring to the public's attention when they're not aligning. I don't know if Connie's coming back on, but Getulio, go ahead. You can go ahead and unmute yourself. Oh, there she is.
So should I just jump in, or? Right. So I mean, if we're looking for a king moment here in Tampa, I would say we definitely we definitely need to address affordable housing. Um, we need to take another look at qualified immunity. We need to look at criminal justice reform from the stance of indigence and mental health, and like alternative response. We've brought it up to city council before, city council meetings before. Eugene, Oregon has a good cahoots program that I definitely think we should emulate here in Tampa. It would be, it's a good form of, let's say, community policing from the perspective of like a mental health crisis or domestic dispute, and it gets like caseworkers and the healthcare system involved.
You
And
know
yeah,
what? Right. Hold, Tulio, before you go into that, Connie said something very interesting. I don't see how anyone can argue with her about the distinction. I mean, when you see this, you really have to be dense not to really be intellectually honest when you see this, where when it's an opioid crisis that impacts a certain group of people, then everybody's saying, oh, we need help. We need help. But then when it's the minority community that's getting um, impacted seriously by way of incarceration and having the rest of their life pretty much messed up because they have to have that as a record. There's a disparity there.
right, right.
There's a disparity. So she's right in saying that. With what you just said, there's another glaring disparity. Look, mental health is real. And more so, we're seeing it now with the pandemic as a backdrop. Okay? We're seeing police officers off themselves and their partners. Just recently here in Florida, two law enforcement officers, a wife and a husband, they committed suicide. The husband was first. And then all of a sudden, which is good, it's a good thing. I'm not criticizing it. It's a good thing to say we need mental health being addressed for our officers. What about those that are in the criminal justice system? What about that? Huh? Because that's not, I know I can recall someone that, based on my opinion, I'm certainly no psychologist or psychiatrist, but geez, a lot of people, years ago, there was I believe, a very severely mentally ill individual who unfortunately, it's tragic, took the life of a law enforcement officer, and they were asking for the death penalty. We want death for that person, whose defense was he's mentally ill. But when it's an officer, let's get help for them. There's a disparity. Okay, go Getulio, and then let's jump back to Connie. I want to give her the rest of the time that we're going to be on because she is the main guest.
No, thank you for bringing up those points. I mean, the disparities are real. You know, there's nothing you can't say about that. The opioid crisis, and then the crack epidemic in the 80s. You know, in the early 90s. Um, I mean, you know, you got to end the war on drugs. You know, like that's what I believe. You got to end the war on drugs. I mean, it's working in Portugal. It's been working in Portugal for the last 20 years. You know, so why don't we look at that system if it's working and implement it here? Um, and I'm not so like I understand the gravity of the disparities. You know, it's like okay, 20, 30 years ago, you know, the crack epidemic was at its height and it was really bad. Now you want to do something for the opioid crisis. Like, I don't, my issue with that is like, I don't want to push up against that because something is getting done. It's more about ensuring that whatever the system is trying to do to mitigate that for white people or whatever, that there's a universality to it, that it encompasses black and brown people of color. Because if that solution for a poor white person applies to a poor black person or a poor Latino person, like make it work for everybody. I'm not you know what I mean? Now, yeah, call out the inherent hypocrisy of okay, now you want to do something, but at the same time, all right, let's do something, but let's make it work for everyone. You know, I mean that's my point of view. And what was the other question, Haiti, that you had, or the other disparity that you brought? Mental health, correct? Yeah, I mean, you know, same thing. Just you have to ensure universality. You have to make sure that people, you know, it's all about equity. You make sure that people don't fall through the cracks. You know, and especially because of their zip code, the color of their skin, or their ethnicity. Like, no. So, no, but I do agree with Connie and the disparities that exist.
Okay, so let's get back with Connie. She's the main guest tonight, and I want her, Connie. Let's show another quote real quick, and I hope I'm not. Okay, here was another quote from Connie. that moved me to bring her on tonight so that she can address this in a virtual. I call this my broadcast a virtual town square, wherever you and everyone's invited. I don't care if I agree with your philosophy or your political views. I don't care. I want everybody to be heard. I was disappointed to see all those politicians leading today parade. If you are serving, how do you lead? Connie.
And so, the point I was making is that I understand people use an occasion for photo op, but in your responsibilities and duties before the parade and after the parade, how then do you become a servant for the people, in behalf of the people? What are you doing? We got a crisis in the middle of the Black community right now, on top of an unending war on drugs, the unending disparities that we all then called out tonight. But from January the 1st until yesterday, we've had 6 young Black men killed. And it is not of sense of urgency with the council or with the mayor. There's an epidemic inside of our community. There is trauma inside of the hood, and nothing is being addressed other than if you see something, the little phrases, if you see something, do something. A young man was killed in Robles Park on New Year's Day in the park. He couldn't run fast enough. He was 33 years old, father of 6, dead. And so when we are talking to law enforcement, it is all being dumped in the lap of the community to solve the crisis. And we know what generates poverty. We say solve poverty. Help us get up out of this epidemic that we're in, and we can solve all this other stuff. But as long as we have young people in the midst of a pandemic that cannot fill out life crisis, that have a myriad of information coming to them through their peers, maybe through music. They have seen a dismantle of the Black families. Many of their fathers and daddies and brothers are incarcerated. We have a crisis, and the mayor is not addressing it. What is being addressed is the Gasparilla Parade tomorrow. What is being addressed from her administration is her big ticket development projects. And as she moved further, to lay out her campaign for her second term, she has not addressed, or in my opinion, shown that she has the capacity of understanding. It's more than just, I don't want to be a Republican from the time you started being eligible to vote until 4 years, 2 years before you decided you want to be the mayor. There has been a lot of harm done by Jane Castor as the police chief, and that harm's continued now as the mayor. And so we have all of this going on in our community, and we are being asked to function, and our children is expected to function, and we are expected to craft out in our minds that we could see a better day. And every damn day we are in, trauma. Who's next? Do we have a sniper amongst us? How then do juveniles, if you're saying juveniles is the perhaps perpetrators, how do the juveniles then outwit veteran detectives and officers in our community? It's almost as if it is being allowed to fester. It is being allowed to create chaos, because in the same property and on the same land and in the same East Tampa, where white people would never have thought about redevelopment, it is now prime real estate. And the people that is living there up under the chaos just want to get out of there. They're being forced out. So a lot is happening in this city. Chris said it right. We could describe these politicians in 3 layers, but I keep them right in the center of their whiteness, Because if they want to solve this, it ain't like they have pushback from their Republican counterparts. Andrew Warren is the chief officer of the state attorney. He can do tremendous things to ease tension inside of our community. They could do it, but they don't have the political will to do it. And that's why I continue, along with these other comrades, to be on the front street advocating, hoping that something would ignite in our people, that to say we got to take our power back from them, because they don't care. When they see crisis like this occurring, they say, oh, it's the next generation they could fix. It's almost like they've written off generation and generation of people and families because they're not willing to spend the financial means to help stabilize any of our people. And so I am highly disappointed with African-American elected officials, those that sit in high places but keep their mouth on mute. I have total no respect for them, because one thing in America, as an African-American, most of us start from the same landing place. And then some of us, based on opportunities, family structure, get a chance to advance. But the way this society is going now, and the fight that we see to control and retain power, we're finding that it's going to be more people on this side of the aisle, and we just going to have to figure out how we going to have to survive, how we going to fight to overturn this thing, and how we going to kill capitalism once and for all. Because it does nothing for a starving family to be just amazed with fashion, clothes items, other people's way of life, as if that's going to give and create a future for our children. You know, I wish peace and blessings to everybody that's rich, but not at my expense.
Listen, but in 2 years, it's a recycle time. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So who's gonna be issuing grades from the main activists out in the city of Tampa? Who shouldn't there be like a report card by right? The persons that are not part of the establishment, huh?
Well,
there, like
inside of our community, I can only say there has been a lot of co-optation. People have been co-opted. Churches, organizations have been co-opted. That they're not willing to stand on the side of the people. They're not willing to fight against the oppression. You know, the fact that you see Christian institutions now is able to align themselves with 5013Cs, and they tell you quick that they can't indulge in political matters. So they definitely have fallen by the wayside of being Dr. King-like. In terms of political organization in our community, they have been charged, they have been asked. And so we'll see just where they're at, and will they align themselves with the people, the poor, and will they take on the mantle of a Dr. King?
Connie, is there any stakeholder or public servant on city council, anyone that you have a good opinion about, respect towards, that they've kind of, maybe they're not perfect, none of us are, but that they have done some things to
let me just say this. Even in my criticism, I have no problem calling up and saying, hey, Councilman Dean Felder, hey, Councilman Boone, let me share this with you. I try to go to the podium being respectful. But the one council that I feel that have attempted to raise the issues of the poor has been Bill Carson, for me, has been Bill Carson. And he time and time again make question as to the inconsistencies that arise from why isn't rehabilitation for housing rehab occurring when things can happen through our funding, CRA funding. So if it would be any of them, it would be him having, muster enough courage, at least to rise these issues when he don't really have a fight in the game at all. I would hope it would have been Orlando Ghouls. Unfortunately, he has not risen to the occasion. He's a former police officer. We had hoped because of his long-term involvement in the Black community and being an African-American man that he would be that sole mouthpiece in behalf of the community. It has not panned out well for us under his leadership.
Haiti, if you're talking to us, you got to unmute.
It always, I don't, I'm gonna have to have something to just smack me or something to stop that. So I wanted you to react to what Connie just said. That's why I asked you to unmute yourself.
Well, okay, you can mute and I'll talk. Connie hit on a lot of key points, and one that really struck out to me was, the Black church, going all the way back to Nat Turner, has been the center of liberation for that community. And Dr. King, really coming out of that church, showed a threat to the powers that be. And she hit the nail on the head in that the powers that be have these really big campaign checks that they get from these really big corporations that have a vested interest in the exploitation of these communities, whether it's through commodities, whether it's through the prison industrial complex, whether it's through the drug rehab clinic industrial complex, because our own drug courts are tied directly to one huge nonprofit in the Tampa Bay area, DACO. And so you got to ask, how many millions of dollars does that program get to not successfully rehabilitate people, but to set them up for failure in many ways? Because you have your freedom put on the line to employees who work for a nonprofit, not law enforcement per se, but these folks there. And I can tell you this much is that we have, a really big problem with money in politics in the Tampa Bay area. Connie touched on it a bit in the fact that why does the rich guy from South Tampa seem to be the only one on the council speaking up for poor people? That's mind-blowing in itself. When we have all these other working class folks on the council. But again, when I was speaking earlier, and I didn't call anybody out specifically, because the truth is the way you measure those categories I gave you is by checking the checks. The checks don't lie. Look at the campaign donations, and you can put for yourself which politicians are in which of those categories I described. And for those city council members who might feel some kind of salty for me speaking this way, well, go back and look at your own people who you beg for money, and then you go ahead and put yourself in the right category and tell me if you're doing right by the community. Haiti, you got the mic. Go ahead, unmute.
Listen, it's 8:18. I'm a little exhausted. I'm nonstop every day with just a ton of things that I'm responsible for. So I'm gonna let Connie wrap it up. We've been going for, if I didn't already mention, since 7, so it's almost an hour and a half. And thank you all for joining. This was an interesting conversation. I'm glad Connie decided to come on to address the community, and I want Connie to come back and let's continue to unpack all these different issues and areas that are needed to have persons in leadership who, like Connie said, we want to inspire them to be bold enough and have courage enough to have king-like moments and not be afraid to speak or to fear losing political support or losing their position. Because I heard this very good quote one day from a judge who someone told me this judge told them this when they went into office. You have to love this job enough to lose it. And that's profound. That's profound. If you just serve one term, but you do it with complete integrity, and you fight for what's right, no matter, because the benefit is not in holding the position. It's because we can serve. We're not in office, and we can serve. It's in standing up for what's right. Dr. Martin Luther King wasn't in office. He wasn't. He was a Baptist minister who changed the world in a huge way. He was bold and courageous, and he died at 39 years old, such a young age. He risked everything. He knew that he was probably going to be assassinated. And thank you for joining me. I'm going to let Connie wrap it up. Thanks to those who tuned in, who will be watching after this is already it has concluded and will stay on as a pre-record. Connie, it's all you. Just
again, I want to thank you and these comrades that's here with me. I've known Chris for a while. We find a way to end up on the same sidewalk every now and then. And I've watched this other young brother from his presentations. I've been impressed, just seeing young people come into political life. I'm just so thankful that in the elders absent, the work will continue. We got a lot to do. I'm hopeful. We have to, keep inspiring each other in ways in which we can encourage others to come and join and participate, because our lives are at stake. I mean, we're in a life or death a moment right now that if I cannot have stable housing, how then would I be able to do anything else? I can't stabilize my family if gunshots is welling over my head every day, but nobody inside of our community can get the necessary skills to become productive. I can't be a fulfilled woman if every Black man that I've loved is in prison for nonviolent offense. It continues to keep us weeping all the time. And so to see this whole America right now is flipped on its side, as much as people want to say that everything is all right, whether they win a Super Bowl or not, it is in trauma itself. And for those of us who understand what is going on, it is our duty, in my opinion, and responsibility to share the message, to ease the grip of fear that is holding people from standing up and fighting back, so we can have a victory and we don't pass this on to the next generation. So at 67, I am very hopeful. I am energized in 2022. And I don't plan on stopping. I'm going to accelerate on. I'm going to be critical until I see them moving in a Dr. King's fashion that will bring democracy out to all and a quality of life for us.
I didn't forget to unmute. Chris is gone. Thanks, Chris, for coming on. Thank you, Getulio, Connie. Thank you, Heidi Oropesa with Floor You Judge. Have a great evening. Till next time.